everyone, James Nine Numbers here. Welcome back to another episode of the Political Freedom Fighters podcast. In this episode, I have with you all here today an unaffiliated who is running for Monroe City Council. And with that being said, I want to introduce Miss Abigail Pepper. How are you, ma'am?
Hi, James. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm very glad to be here, and I'm excited that you invited me on here. I'm doing super well, and looking forward to this conversation.
That is awesome. My first question to you is, who are you and what do you do?
Great question. So I'm Abigail Pepper, and I am running for Monroe City Council. And in my personal life, I work in communications with nonprofits. And right now, I'm running for City Council. So that's been really interesting balancing. I have a full-time job, but I'm also running for this position that requires a lot of time and a lot of, boots on the ground action. But I've really, really enjoyed it. And I guess a little bit about me is I was born and raised in North Carolina. I'm an 8th generation North Carolinian. And I believe that we shouldn't have to be a Republican or a Democrat in order to be heard and to be seen, as well as have opinions on what's going on in our cities, in our states, and in our country. And so many things have become so politically divided. It's become a distraction from actually getting care to the people that need it.
Absolutely. And I guess my next question to you is, let's go over a little bit about your history.
Cool. So I'm trying to think where I should start with my history. I guess we'll start with after I graduated with a master's in political science at Appalachian State University. And then I was thinking I was wanting to go into law school. And that was because I have type 1 diabetes myself. And I was diagnosed when I was 13 years old and very quickly learned about how I was fortunate enough that we didn't have issues affording insulin or supplies. However, that was not the case for many other people, friends of mine, people in the community. And so I had started really enjoying the advocacy part, and specifically patient advocacy, all throughout high school and then into college. I actually co-founded a college club chapter for people who were affected by diabetes, and we raised money for people who couldn't afford insulin. And that was just, it still is very much a passion of mine. But going from there, I was thinking I wanted to go into law school and maybe something within policy in that angle. But then I ended up talking to someone who was actually an App alum, and she was a housing lobbyist, an affordable housing lobbyist. And prior to our conversation, lobbyist was a very bad word. It's like, oh, they're a lobbyist. And then I found out, okay, there are good guys in this too. And so from there, I actually went into health policy lobbying and health education. And so I kind of bebopped around. I interned for a lobbying firm. Then I worked at a health education organization, and then did more health policy lobbying, which I really, really enjoyed that, especially the patient advocacy piece. And what that involved was I was in DC for about 3 years, and that involved we would go to the Capitol and talk to representatives, and we'd actually equip constituents to advocate for themselves. That was super important, and still is to me today, that everyone is given the tools and knowledge they need to be able to speak for themselves and say what they need personally. And so being able to bring patients up on the Hill into these meetings and talking with their congressional members or congressional staff, and then leaving that meeting feeling heard and fulfilled and saying, I feel like, if anything, at the end of the day, at least I was able to say my piece. Obviously, we hope for more, but it's a really super cool field. And now I've kind of transitioned into the more communication side of thing. I did health policy communications, and now I'm doing I touch a couple of places with health policy, but right now I'm actually a lot more in the education advocacy space. So that's been new and interesting. But really all of this came from myself being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and seeing the affordability crisis, as well as access. There's people who just don't even know what is out, the technology that's available to them that can really improve their quality of life. And so all of that has really brought me to where I am today, because I've really taken that advocacy and that people first approach. And instead of constantly saying, oh, like, someone's got to do something, it's like at some point it's like, okay, maybe I can be that someone. And I believe that for everybody, if you find yourself constantly saying someone's got to do something, it can be you. It doesn't mean you have to run for office, even though that's great. We need more people running for office, but it could also just be like hosting this podcast, helping people get platforms and hear more about what they're talking about, their campaigns. Or it could be canvassing door to door, knocking for a candidate that's already running. Those kinds of everything. And writing postcards is another one for candidates, is a really big help. So there's so much folks can do to get involved and make an impact when you look around and see so much that needs to be done.
Absolutely. And I guess my next question for you is, why are you running for Monroe City Council?
I'm running for Monroe City Council for a couple of reasons. One of them being that North Carolina passed a law in 2025, I believe. I may have that year. It might be 2024. It was very recently. But they passed HB3, and that meant that candidates could no longer, so let me back up. For the past 65 years in Monroe, these elections have been nonpartisan. There's no letter next to people's names. It's just you run. It's not even unaffiliated. There's just no parties, and you run based on the name and who they are and your interactions with them, and you're judging based off of their platform, not a letter by their name. Well, when HB3 passed, that changed, and it moved our elections to the following year, which is now it's 2026. They were supposed to happen last year until that bill passed. And so that meant everyone who was already in office got an extra year of their seated position, which is also not amazing when that's not how people elected them. And then also this coming election changed to where everyone has to be affiliated with a party to run on the primary ballot. And so in a way, a part of my this campaign is to kind of push back on that anyway of, okay, well, I'm going to run unaffiliated anyway. I'd been talking about running for a little bit, and I kept kind of thinking about it. And then once this bill passed, or this law passed, I was like, okay, that's the catalyst. I think that's my sign. We're now basically pushing out so many voices by making this very partisan. And so that's partially why I ran, to give that platform to unaffiliated voters, because Monroe actually has the largest voting bloc are unaffiliated voters. So more than Republicans as a voting bloc, more than Democrats as a voting bloc are unaffiliated. And in our county as a whole, Union County, we do have more registered unaffiliated voters overall than any other party. So we have a very large base. So it's wild that this was able to happen, and it happened behind so many voters' backs. No one heard that this was going to happen. We weren't told that a vote was going to take place. It literally just a random day. It was like, okay, this law has passed, and now Monroe's elections are partisan, and they've been pushed back an entire year. And some people already had their campaigns up and running. Like this was last year, they were gearing up, and then this happened. And it was like, oh, never mind. Let's put everything on hold. And so, but that's only part of the reason I'm running. The other reason I'm running is because I believe that Monroe deserves better. We have a highly, highly partisan political atmosphere right now. There's been a lot of we have Christian nationalists that have been really, really influencing a lot of discussions, a lot of policy passings, and events that have occurred here. That there's just been a lot of assumptions and a lot of division that's not helping anybody. When they decide to target a restaurant that does drag shows for all ages, that's not really helping anyone be able to afford their groceries. And then when the restaurant decided, okay, we'll make it adults 18 and up, drag shows only, so they complied. They're like, okay, we understand, sure. The attacks didn't stop on that restaurant, and so they're continuing to be attacked based on identity politics, culture war politics. And again, what is that doing for your neighbor, for yourself? We had the mayor pass a proclamation in 2024 on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade being struck down. And so a citywide proclamation, regardless of your views on abortion, again, you have to ask, what did that do for people? Nothing but contribute to culture war politics. That doesn't help women who are trying to decide what they should do, or they're worried, or they don't know what their next steps are. That just causes more strife. And so there's so much of that right now. And I've talked to so many people who are so tired of this. It's like, well, it would just be really nice if we could, fix the roads, or if we could maybe just like figure these intersections. There's a bunch that are causing crashes all the time, and that's not what we're talking about. Those things, those everyday needs that affect people, that's what needs to be addressed. And that's part of why I'm running, is because we need someone that's actually serving the people, not a party or national party interests that do not affect our everyday lives.
All right, that is actually pretty good to hear. So, what is the Monroe City Council? Like, what does it do?
Great question. So Monroe City Council does a lot of different things, and I have even learned so much since I've started to run, learning about things I just didn't even realize they cover. But their city council does a ton of different things. So they look at when housing developments come in and these developers come and say, hey, we want to build here. City council can decide to say yes or no based on a number of things. And they even, this is very relevant for right now. A lot of states, as you probably know, are facing drought right now. And North Carolina is one of those. Monroe specifically has pretty low water. We were just moved to stage 2 this week. So it's mandatory water conservation, higher fees. And all of that is happening. And interesting, it was so interesting to attend the city council meeting where the city engineers, they came in, they gave a presentation of, all right, here's the current situation, here's the exact amount of water we have today, and what we're looking at if we get to this amount. And they basically proposed, based on their own research and what they're in it every day, seeing this water reservoir, and they proposed, can you please, if we get to this number of gallons left of water, can you please propose a mandatory fee? And so they were pushing this, and so they gave this really interesting presentation, and city council was listening to that, and they decided from their presentation, yes, that makes sense to us. If we get to that level, we're going to go ahead and sign off that the city will make a citywide water conservation effort. And so city council hears from all sorts of people, whether it's city engineers, it can be, I've seen teachers talk up there about school things, although school stuff specifically is more into the school board. But there's so much city council does. Like I'm going to give tangible results here. One thing that is really cool about city council that a lot of people don't realize is they really touch every part of the city, and also have they work with the county all the time. And so even if there's an issue that, for example, like I was saying with schools, that a teacher is having an issue with, maybe there's overcrowding of students in a classroom, they can still go to a city council member and say, hey, this is my issue. And a city council member can say, well, while I don't have power over that, I can connect you with these people, and I can talk to them on your behalf or bring you with me so we can discuss this together, because those things still do have an impact. Like, for example, housing that's approved directly affects the number of students in a school. And so all of those things are basically piled on top of each other. And so there's a lot of being mindful of everything that's going on, because they have to approve the budget, the city budget. They have to approve grants for nonprofits, in addition to building developments. They also have to go to several meetings. The other interesting thing I will say is there are, I don't know a lot, like tons about other city councils, because everyone does that a little differently, but here it's been interesting. We have several different committees, and these committees are usually chaired by a city council, one or two city council members, and then it's other people that are residents of Monroe. They're not politicians, but they're people that live here and who were appointed or applied, and then they were interviewed and selected. But that's been really cool for the animal welfare committee, because we've got people who work in shelters that are on these committees and can say, hey, from my personal experience, this is what we need. We also have a disabilities committee, and we have people who are personally impacted by that on those committees, and they can make recommendations to city council, who then has that vote and that further information to make a better informed decision. And so there's so much they do, and that touches all areas of people's lives, and we don't really see that, and a lot of people don't know how much impact city councils can have on our lives, and that's something I want to change as well.
Okay, that is awesome to hear. So, what's your thoughts on the major parties?
Great question. So I am, to be honest, I think like a lot of people, I'm jaded. I don't know, maybe jaded is not even the right word. It's more of, I've been really tired of both parties saying one thing, and it's to help their campaign run it, and it's a great, like, for example, going back to Roe v. Wade, I felt like that was like a carrot that was dangled in front of Democrat voters of like, oh, well, we have to protect your privacy in the doctor's offices over and over again. And it's like, that's, to me, it just feels really gross that like and that's on both sides, where they use these issues that are very, very important to people and does impact their lives, and uses it as a voting issue, but they don't ever actually act on it, because then they'll lose their voting leverage, which I've always thought is silly, because if they would just plug in with the regular person, there's so many other issues that people absolutely are interested in. And if a candidate would run on those issues, they wouldn't have a problem. It doesn't need to be a life or death, or whether you have privacy in the clinical office or not. It can be as simple as, hey, like, we have an affordability issue. Let's look at, for example, groceries. If we can kind of like Attorney Jeff Jackson with North Carolina recently joined a lawsuit about eggs being way overpriced. And then now we have I think we got like 3,000 free eggs because of the lawsuit. But those things, that matters. That truly impacts people's daily lives, and addressing those issues will get you votes. And that's something I think on both sides people are almost purposely obtuse about. Like, we're tired of these culture war issues. We're tired of being told that you're going to do one thing, but then you decide, okay, no, actually I'm not going to do it, even though I ran on it. And I'm saying all that to say, I think that I would love to do something like proportional representation or ranked choice voting, because that gives, again, talking about unaffiliated voters, give it a lot more choice and representation to those people who don't really feel represented by either one. And so we have so many other options. Also, we are the only developed country, or one of the only developed countries that does not operate our democracy through proportional representation. So, and which gives so much room for gerrymandering, and again, just cutting out people's voices on either side. It happens on both sides. It's really not a Republican or a Democrat thing. This is a people thing, and we really need to come together on. That's something I've been really big about within my campaign is, okay, like, even if you feel a certain way and I feel differently, my role as running for city council is to make sure that you have all the things you need to succeed and thrive in the city, and that your neighbors need to succeed and thrive. And that does not have to have anything to do with what your party is, what the letter is on your voter registration. And I think a lot more people are waking up to that perhaps these parties are not necessarily for us, and they're for corporate interests. And we need to get back to, I don't even know get back to is the right word, but we need to get to a place where we're actually voting and feel represented, and it's not just another election of the lesser evil, because no one ever likes whoever's running, or they convince themselves to be okay with this person. That's not how this should be at all. These are public servants. So I think a lot of politicians have forgotten that their whole job description is to be a public servant. It is not to be a corporate servant. It is not to be a fundraising servant. I know, and the way our elections are designed makes that really difficult. However, that's what we need to be moving towards is what do the people want? Therefore that's what we're going to work towards getting.
That's great to hear. So I guess next up we're going to go over your competition. You're the only unaffiliated running, and you're running against 3 Republicans and a Democrat. So what's your thoughts on all the other candidates?
So this has been an interesting race in general, because like you're saying, and I feel like city council there's always a couple of seats running, which I feel like can be different than a lot of other political seats or political offices, because it's usually, okay, by this point after the primary, it's maybe 1, maybe 2 people that you're running against if there is somebody who's unaffiliated. Whereas this is, we've got, like you're saying, we have, I think we have 3 Republicans, 1 Democrat, and we also had another unaffiliated candidate until recently, and she had to drop out because they are moving out of state. But so I'm the only unaffiliated now, and it's been a really interesting process, I guess, because I by being unaffiliated, I kind of already made the decision knowing that I would be a little bit more isolated, because I can have some support from people, but a lot of people aren't hearing from me as much because I don't have the budget that these party offices do to push out candidates. And the other thing is, there's not as much opportunity to go and talk to these candidates to kind of decide where we stand together and where we're maybe less aligned. But my priority with these candidates, I was listening to a couple of your other podcasts, and I really liked what Vicky said, and it's similar to how I feel. Of, I don't look at these candidates as necessarily opposition. It's more of whether they can be partners to the mission of helping people succeed. And the issue there, of course, is there is that those party lines, and some of them are a lot stronger. And we have, I'm not one to like throw dirt or because I'm trying to run on my own merit and what I'm doing. But I will say that we have some candidates that are running on a largely Christian nationalist platform, which harms people. That's the thing. Any policy that harms people is not Christian, in my opinion. I grew up Christian. I was very, very involved in the church for a very long time. And my whole thing was Jesus. To me, Christian nationalists are like Pharisees. If you understand biblical references, it's very apparent. For example, Pharisees told Jesus that he could not heal a person who was sick that approached him because it was the Sabbath. And Jesus was like, he's right in front of me. I'm going to heal him because my whole point of being here is to help others, not follow archaic laws. And that's something I feel like we're seeing a lot of today, where they want to throw out these again, archaic beliefs and things that are very outdated and say, well, this is why I'm on this policy platform because of my faith. Well, number one, we've got a separation of church and state, which is very important and there for a reason. And number two, that's literally the antithesis of what Jesus if we're talking within biblical standards, that when he came to the earth, under the whole thing is that to leave behind these outdated texts and listen to the okay, what is Jesus actually talking about? And it's about helping people and about thinking about the golden rule, essentially, of treat others how you would want to be treated. And so I've just seen a lot of hatred targeted towards the trans community and the LGBTQ community in general. And again, I believe a lot of that is culture war distractions, because there's not a lot of policies that they actually can stand on that people would support. And an easy way to distract from not having a solid policy ground is to say, look at these trans people, they're poisoning our children. It's just that's not the case. And it's very harmful to target entire populations that way. And so there's been a lot of that, and that's something that's extremely disappointing. And I'm really hoping that whoever does get in these seats, I'm very, very open to working together and saying, all right, this is where I stand, but where I draw the line is we're not going to harm other people or target a specific demographic. If it does not help our community, then we are not doing it. This is not why we're here. We're here because of all the countless conversations I have had during the petition process as an unaffiliated. And so not one person, I talked to hundreds of people, not one person said, I'm really bothered by like transgender people in Monroe and what they're doing. No one said that. But what they did talk about was affordability. They talked about how transportation is a really tricky issue, and especially for seniors who don't have cars, don't have licenses anymore. That was such a common thread. Housing, that was another big thing people were concerned about. And I did have a number of people tell me they were concerned because of the level of division at our council level was unproductive, and they felt like nothing was actually getting done. And so those issues are what we need to tackle, not these fake issues that are not actually a problem. And also remember that not everybody is a Christian, and that's okay. But also to behave like a Christian is to not harm others. And so that's something we need to keep in mind of.
All right, that's good to hear. So, anyways, I'm pulling up your website right now, and and on your website you talk about like 3 issues. And if it's okay with you, I would like to like read these stances, and then you can respond to them. Is that good?
That's great.
All right, the first issue: a city council that works for you. Monroe residents deserve elected officials who show up to do a job, not pick a fight or make a news headline. Too much of the current council's energy has gone toward conflict, posturing, and political theater instead of solutions. That's not what local government is for. I'm running as unaffiliated because I don't answer to a party. I answer to Monroe residents. I'll work with anyone who wants to move this city forward by ensuring the well-being of residents is at the forefront of every decision. Local government works best when the people running it check their partisan agendas at the door and focus on what actually improves daily life in Monroe. That's the standard I'll hold myself to.
Yep, and I think that speaks to what we were just kind of talking about. Like, it's one thing to say you're tackling a non-issue, and it's another to say, okay, let's talk about the issues that actually people are worried about, that are affecting their lives, that it doesn't matter if they're a Republican or a Democrat, it's going to affect everyone. And so I really firmly believe I listed number 1 on purpose too, because that is my number 1 priority, is making sure that a city council, my job also, if I were to be elected, is that when I get in there, if there is partisan issues coming up or some distractions or like that political posturing, let's have a reality check. I really want to be a part of that equation to say, hey, that's not how this works. Let's stay on this same page, and that same page should be for the people.
Alrighty. Next up, growth that makes sense. Growth is an important part of any city's long-term economic stability. When done well, it creates opportunity, supporting local jobs, strengthening the tax base, and giving families more choices about where and how they live. In Monroe, growth is not just inevitable, it's already happening. But growth without intention comes at a cost. Everyone in Monroe deserves the same opportunities to thrive, no matter what neighborhood they live in or what kind of home they can afford. Thoughtful growth means making sure every neighborhood has access to basic resources, reliable trash and recycling pickups, safe roads and crosswalks, public transportation, nearby groceries, and medical care. We cannot afford to allow developers to maximize profits while communities absorb the consequences. Growth should serve every resident, not leave parts of Monroe behind. Whether you can afford a large new home or an apartment on the edge of town, you should still receive the same level of services, safety, and opportunity as anyone else. My goal is to make sure that as Monroe grows, existing residents aren't pushed aside and new residents aren't set up in communities that lack the resources necessary to achieve the quality of life they've worked for.
This is probably one of the top issues that I was able to discuss when I was doing the petitioning process to get on the general ballot. And that is the issue of, yes, we need housing, but we need affordable housing. It does not matter how many houses you build, how many units you build, if they are unaffordable. That doesn't help anybody. It does help developers, but that's a huge issue. We need to. The thing is, if you with Monroe, we have a lot of blue collar workers that we have there's not many people that work from home here. This is very much a working class community, and we've recently had developers come in and build these homes that then they put on market for the same price as places in Charlotte. And that's not, we are not Charlotte. Monroe is not, even though we're still about 30-40 minutes away from Charlotte, but our prices are matching in some areas. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying they actually found a cheaper apartment in Charlotte than Monroe. And that's absurd, to be honest. And speaking to the issues of within neighborhoods that already exist, a big part of this is we can't have the people who really helped shape what Monroe is today. And Monroe is such a beautiful city. We have so many things going on, a really amazing community of people who have made it what it is today. And if we allow developers to come in and outprice the locals and outprice the people who made it the appealing place people want to move to, then we're not appreciating and rewarding the people who have built into this community. And that's one thing that I feel like is so important. We need to make sure that people that are there making the effort to bring more people together, to make the city more beautiful, to make it safer, that those people feel appreciated, because that's the kind of thing we want to encourage and see more of. Community is the core of success in any civilization, is bringing people together. And I mean, that goes back to the whole party issue too, that there's a reason people want us to stay divided, because together we are stronger and we have a lot more leverage when we can all stand together and say, hey, we realize we have differences, but at the end of the day, we're all impacted by these things. Like, for example, with our street signs, there are a lot of people who live on streets where their signs aren't there anymore. They haven't been there for years or months or years. And so people who are mail trying to get to them, or if they're trying to call an ambulance for help, that's going to delay the ambulance by critical minutes because they're trying to find a house where the street doesn't have a sign. Those things are what actually impact us. And it is wild to me that we are in 2026 and in the same community where we have some houses being sold for $600,000, we also have neighborhoods that don't have street signs. So, and delay ambulance. Like, that's wild to me. And same with trash pickup. Some people have trash pickup in Monroe, but others in the same city don't have trash pickup. And those things are what we need to be addressing. And so that goes to housing affordability. It goes to healthcare access. There's so many different parts of this that are everyday impacts that we can make moves to change. If we look at, for example, this Mayor Mamdani in New York City, he has the reason I believe he has been so successful so soon and so early in his campaign is he is addressing the things that actually affect people who live there. That's like people complained about trash in the streets. He immediately put more public trash cans out for people, and it did reduce trash. Adding more streetlights to increase safety. So like these basic things that improve the quality of life, that's what people are looking for. They're really not asking for much. It is just listening and then saying, hey, I know I can do this, and here's what I can't do, but I can contact someone who I know can do this. And just being that person that the community can count on to deliver on their promises and to make their lives better.
All right, that's good to hear. Now let's go over your third issue. Local leadership you can actually reach. Public servants should be reachable, accountable, and present throughout their term, not just at election time. Monroe residents should feel empowered to reach out to their leaders when they aren't sure how to get a speed bump installed in their neighborhood, when they see a new development being built, or want to know how to find out when the next music or main event is happening. Every constituent concern deserves a real and timely response. Decisions made by this council should be publicly explained, not just announced. Residents deserve to know not just what was decided, but why. If elected, I will be accessible year-round. I will explain my votes. I will show up to community conservations. I will treat every person who reaches out as someone whose time and concern matters. If I don't have an answer for you, I'll find someone who does. That's the job I'm signing up for.
That speaks to my own conversations I've had, as well as some of my own experiences living in different places, is not really knowing who is there to be a resource, or you only hear about a city council member around election time because you see their sign, and that's the only reason you may know their name. Those kinds of things are that's not just a Monroe issue. That is a nationwide issue of these local elections kind of getting buried. But I believe, the way people get into congressional House seats, the way people get into congressional Senate seats, is they started at the local level. So these people who have just started taking rights away and talking about increased gerrymandering and talking about supporting things that are ripping families apart, they all started because they were on a school board, because they were on a city council seat, because they were a county commissioner. That's where people start, and that means that's where we need to be paying more attention to, are those seats. Because yes, I do believe we have very limited choice once we get to the national level of elections. However, that's not the case at the local level, and we can determine who ends up, not always, but we would have a heavier hand in determining who gets up to those seats by paying more attention to what's happening at the local level. And that only happens if we can bring more eyes to what's going on. And so, for example, part of my campaign has been focusing attention on flock surveillance cameras, and the issues with privacy and the data insecurity, really a ton of issues that are under the flock umbrella, and why that's so concerning. And we had a public safety committee meeting in February that a lot of people didn't know about. And I amplified that meeting. I'm sure to some people that were not super appreciative of that, but I made a video about that and really promoted, hey guys, this is a really important topic that if you have the ability to be at this meeting, please be there. And then if they couldn't be there, I made a summary of here's what was discussed and here's what that means for you. We need more explanation of policies and things that are being considered in general. That is our job as city council members. If there's things that are happening, just like with HB3, no one explained that. No one saw that coming. We should have. That is part of the responsibility, is letting people know, hey, like, if you are concerned about these things, here's when we're talking about them. Is there something we are not talking about? Please let us know so that we can add it to the agenda, because the more we can get our everyday residents involved in what's happening, the more they're going to feel connected. They're going to have access to resources and feel more fulfilled, as well as feel like they are being heard and listened to, which is what we want. We want them to be heard and listened to. I want to be heard and listened to as a resident. And part of that is letting folks know what's actually happening. Because unfortunately, a lot of these meetings happen in the middle of the day on a Thursday, and people are in work, they have jobs, they have school they're going to, they have their kids in school, and so it's hard to make these. So then that puts the onus on us. Okay, if I signed up for this, I go to these meetings, then it's my job to take that information and let people know, whether that's on social media, in my everyday conversations, or in these evening meetings, to let people know, hey, just want to flag that we talked about this last week, or hey, this issue is happening. Please let me know your thoughts on this, because I want to bring more of everyone's voice in. And that starts with letting people know who the city council members are, and like you were at, what we do for people. And again, if we can't give an answer, we can find someone who can, because people need to know that we serve the public, and that's part of doing that.
That's awesome. So I guess my next question for you is, where do you fall under the political spectrum? I asked this to all unaffiliated, so I might as well ask you that as well.
Yeah, I feel very comfortable saying I am a progressive. I've had many people like, oh, you're just a Democrat hiding under unaffiliated. And if I wanted, I would just run as a Democrat because that's a lot easier than running as unaffiliated, because I don't get the funding, I don't get the support, I didn't get to be on the primary. The name recognition is a huge thing I'm really having to work on, which I actually like. We're doing really well, and I think that just speaks to people being tired of parties. I expected we are working hard, but I expected it was like going to be a huge uphill battle for name recognition, and I've really not found that to be an issue. And people have stopped me in stores and say, hey, are you Abigail? And so that's the message is clearly is strong, and people are looking for this. But I am on the progressive scale, and the reason I'm not a Democrat or I'm not a Republican is, again, this goes back to the two-party thing. It doesn't work for the people, and I do not want to be held accountable to a party leader. That is like a direct conflict of interest. I want to be held accountable to the people. I want someone to be able, whether they're a Republican, a Democrat, unaffiliated, whatever, I want them to be able to reach out to me and say, hey, as a voter, here's my issue. Not as a fellow Republican, as a fellow Democrat, but hey, as a fellow resident of the same city as you, and a person who decides whether you win your next election, or whether I speak out because I don't feel like this issue is being addressed. That's where my responsibility lies, and that's something I feel very strongly about. And I personally don't want to, I will, again, people have said too, they're like, oh, well, we see that like, the Democratic Party supports you. Yes, they do. The Republican Party is also welcome to support me. If I would not, anyone who wants to endorse me, that's great. And I would love to talk with them, to, again, work for the success of people. But my values do align more with the Democratic Party, just happens to be that way. But especially on the national level, I don't necessarily would want to have that affiliation, because there's plenty that Democrats also like. Maybe I shouldn't be bringing up so many national and international issues, because that's always, but my thing is essentially both sides have a lot of issues. And that's not to say unaffiliated doesn't have its own thing, where some people are like, well, I don't know what you stand for. Well, the whole point is the progressive, the background of that is to make sure people have the quality of life and they can thrive. And I feel like that should be an agreement that all parties align with. Unfortunately, we've seen time and time again that doesn't actually play out that way, and there's just a lot of token things that are like a carrot dangled in front of all of us, and that's not. I'm not here for like a party issue. I'm here for a voter issue, just as for myself. I've been unaffiliated my entire time I've been able to vote, and that's because I've always thought I remember like when I first heard about like people doing like straight down the ticket, it's like, that's a little bit wild. Because of a letter, you're just going to be like, yep, this is who because I have the same letter next to my name. That's wild. That's crazy to me. We need to be doing, and I understand being able to have the time and luxury to learn everything about a candidate and their pros and cons. That's a lot of work. And again, I think that goes back to a council you can reach. we need to be doing a better job of letting people know where we stand on our platforms, so that people don't feel like they have to dig to find out who we are and what we stand for. I'm very comfortable saying where I stand, and also very comfortable saying it's okay if you disagree. At the end of the day, it's what can be done for everyone that we are at forward direction. And we're not targeting specific populations. This is about Monroe as a whole succeeding, and the people in it having access to advocate for themselves as well.
All right, that's fair. I was gonna ask, would you be open to getting endorsed by third parties, but I think you already answered that. And yeah, I'll make sure to get some third parties again to contact with you, and we'll go from there.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, James.
All right, I got some more questions for you. So, how's the campaign going right now?
It's going pretty well. I've really been enjoying this entire process. I was pretty nervous at first because I didn't really know what to expect. I've never ran for office before, and then running as unaffiliated as my first running for office was also just very nerve-wracking. But I've had so much support and so many people very excited. I just think that really speaks to people are ready for a change, and they're ready for something different. And we've seen that at the local level, and we've seen that at the national level. People are really tired of being told what they need. It's time for public servants to be told by the people, no, actually, these are the things that affect us every day. These are what we need. So my whole process when I'm going door to door, I'm not knocking, hey there, here's the things I'm going to do for you. Like, here's what you need to be done. It's, hey, here are things I feel can impact your life, and things I'm seeing that are issues currently, but I would love to hear from you first before I tell you things you may already know. What's bothering you? What is impacting you most today? And phrasing that approach has been just so fruitful, and I've heard so many things from people that I had not thought of before or had been aware of before having these conversations. Specifically, the one that really stands out is how many seniors are struggling with transportation, and we have very limited public transportation here, and that is not to dog on the people who are working in that space. They're working very hard to get people access, but I think we need to bring more attention to that so we can get greater funding and better planning to decide, so that we don't have seniors making sure all their doctor's appointments fall on a Friday, because that's when the bus comes to bring people to their doctor's appointments. And so I think going from that lens, it's been a really good campaign, and people are excited and have reached out to ask how they can help. I've had people from both sides of the aisle come to me and say, hey, like, I'm really, really tired of these party politics. I would just love someone to be the job they say they're going to be, and not pretend to be the senator or the governor of the state, and pretend to be in a role and pretend they can change things that they have no power over. And instead, here's my role as city council. I can tell you right now, here's what I can do, here's what I can't do. And if we can't do it, here's the avenues we can take. And that's what people are wanting. That's what they're looking for.
All right, that is awesome. Do you got any social media?
I do, yes. So I have Instagram, and that's Abigail Pepper, N as in Nancy, C for North Carolina. So it's Abigail Pepper, NC. I also have TikTok, which is I'm not like amazing at keeping up with that, but I do have a couple videos on there, and I believe that is Pepper for Monroe. And then I have my Facebook, and that is Abigail Pepper for Monroe City Council. And those three are the only social media I have.
All right, that's awesome. Since we still got some time left, let's go over some other parts of your platform. What else what else do you plan on running on?
Well, I will say I'd love to dig in a little bit more on the flock stuff, just because that has been such a big thing that we've been talking about. I'm actually co-hosting an event this Friday about flock. It's an educational, informational session on, okay, we're not just saying this is an issue. I had someone reach out and say, well, you're just running on this because people get really angry about it. So it's something you can hold on to for a campaign. And it's like, No, this is not a Monroe issue. This is a nationwide issue. There are people all over the country pushing back against flock surveillance, and the reason we are talking about it now in Monroe is we have 27 flock cameras here in Monroe, and we have next year an anticipated proposed expansion of the flock contract, and that looks like 150 more cameras at least in our little small town of Monroe. And that is an issue for so many reasons. But one thing is that we're not taking the angle of, oh, police bad. This is, we don't big brother, like, but there's a big brother aspect, but it's not, oh, it's just, oh, we don't trust the police or however anyone feels about the police. This is an issue about, mainly this is about, Flock is a third party company. They do not have any alliances or any alliance to our state, our people, our residents, our city council, our police officers. They are a business, and they have active patents right now that can identify people by their race, by their gender, by their height and weight. It can figure that out just from the camera. There are so many things that these cameras track that are incredibly invasive. It's a Fourth Amendment, Fourth Amendment constitutional right that's being broken right now. And so many people they're not aware, they aren't aware of the extent of flock cameras, or I've also heard of people who are, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, why do you care? And that is not the approach we should be taking to wide surveillance. I understand the feeling behind that, but the thing is, say you're comfortable with everyone who's in charge right now in the political space and you feel fine, not threatened. That's fine. However, we do have elections and leaders change. Do you trust? You don't know who the next leader is going to be, whether it's in your city, whether it's your police chief, anyone who's in power who has that control. We don't know who that's going to be next. And there is abuse within the correctional system, within our judicial system, that I personally do not feel comfortable putting my freedoms in the security of a surveillance system that is owned by a private company who has called the people who are using their constitutional right to speak out against Flock. The CEO has called those people traitors of the country. So I think that says a lot about what is behind their motives. Their contract language is intentionally very vague. They say they can use the data and give it to anyone when they feel like there is a substantial need. Okay, what does substantial need mean? So essentially, and this is also, Flock has been hacked several times. So this is so much personal data about where you go to worship, where your children go to school, where you go to work, where your home is, that is being logged in these databases. And we don't know who's actually seeing this, who has access to this at any given time, because it's so insecure. And to have this much information and to be as loosey-goosey with this data is absurd. And I'm not, I am for public safety. I'm so for public safety, but there are absolutely other ways that are way more, they're backed by research. They have shown much more public safety improvement that are not Flock cameras, and that are also usually less expensive. Streetlight installation decreased assault in New York City by 36%. I know that revamping areas or revitalizing areas that have abandoned buildings or abandoned vacant lots, that reduced aggravated assaults by 30%. And then also, like, big brothers, big sisters, having that youth mentorship, that dropped. They had a case study of a control group of peers and then peers who were having this mentorship, and the mentored group were 54% less likely to be arrested. That's huge. I mean, it's more than half. So we have real ways that are usually done by grassroots communities. It's very community based, not third party random guy over here who has access to your data. It's people who know who's been working in the community and can say, here's what we need. Here's the populations that have the least resources. Here's how we get them connected. That's what creates real public safety. It's a little bit more work, but it is a way bigger payoff. And that's the energy we need to be moving toward and using, not this third party private company that has been caught lying several times. I could talk about this for a very long time because there's just so much egregious evidence of people being jailed for months off of a invalid license plate error. There have been people who have been held at gunpoint. There are people who are mauled by there's a guy who's mauled by a dog, all because the license plate was misread. That's not okay. That's not a free country by any means. And so that's what that is a people affected issue. And we've not had issues so far in Monroe, but that doesn't mean we will. It's the same system. And again, what we need to be in the prevention, not reaction. So I'm all about prevention, and we can see the full picture. It's being painted for us by all these other cities in the country. So how about before someone gets really hurt or even killed, we say, hey, this data is not safe. This company is not safe. We need to be putting our residents first and their public safety first.
I agree, and especially with some of the other companies like YouTube requiring ID verification checks. Same thing with Discord, and we're seeing this all over the world with the United Kingdom and Australia with some pretty bad results from what I have heard. So this is pretty scary, especially hearing the whole somebody actually getting mauled. Did that actually happen?
It really did. Yes, I can actually tell you the name of the man because I have it in my part of my notes of. Because it's important that his story is shared more too. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to make sure I give you. Okay, so it happened in Toledo, Ohio, and his name is Brandon Upchurch. And they had sorry, I went to my tab. Here it is. But they were pulled over. They saw lights, and they pulled over. They were compliant. It was a man and his cousin. His cousin stayed in the car, and they asked the other guy to step out because they said his license plate was stolen. And he was like, "It's not, but okay, I'll step out of the car." There's video footage of it, and they ask him, they're yelling at him gunpoint, get on the ground, and he's walking away from the roadway, and he's about to get on the ground, and then they sick a dog on him, and he had to be hospitalized. And again, he literally did nothing wrong. His license plate ended up not being stolen. He was complying. He was getting away from the road, which is a very safe and smart thing to do. And that's one case of many, many cases where we've had, there were grandparents that were held at gunpoint and told to get on the ground, and their granddaughter was still in the car while these police with guns were yelling at her grandparents because of another stolen plate. Spoiler alert, it wasn't stolen. And actually, the license plate that was stolen, they'd already recovered. So they were harassing this family, and it was okay, the license plate you're looking for has already been recovered if you would communicate with your fellow officers. There's just so much abuse that can happen, and that we have to really consider, are the upsides worth all of the dangers, all of the freedoms being taken? I say no.
I agree with that. I really, really am not in favor of a police surveillance state at all.
Yep. It's not, and that's the thing. This is something that is this is a nonpartisan issue of all. This should not be a Republican and we've seen Congress come together for a bill. Unfortunately, it did get voted down, but it was a bipartisan bill specifically to look into. It was an investigation pushed to see about the security of our data with Flock, because that's how rampant its misuse has been. And so everyone's being concerned about this, and this issue has been so salient. People are very concerned about this. You really talk to anybody and they're like, oh, I've been wondering about those, or oh, I'm also concerned about those. I have not had anyone in person tell me that they were not at least concerned about the issue. I've had some people online say that, but But once, like, I truly believe that's also why we're having this educational session. Here's what's happening. Then you can decide. Like, I want just like for any issue, if I'm elected, any issue that is on the table, I want people to be fully aware of the upsides and the downsides. We cover in this session, like, why police say it's good, why Flock says they're good. And then we also say what's not great about it, because I think everyone should have all the information before they make that decision. And so Flock is just one example of many moving forward of how I plan to approach issues that, even if they are highly contested or hot button issues, let's look at this at how it can help us and then how it can hurt us.
Alrighty, that's fair enough. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
The only thing I guess I'll say is, well, number one, I really appreciate you bringing me on your podcast. I really like what you're doing. This is so important. We need more people amplifying these unaffiliated voters or third-party voters or candidates and voters, because there's clearly an undercurrent, a movement here that needs to be said, that right now I feel like is being compressed, and we need to bring that louder, amplify that. And also, I just want to say, for anyone who is interested in getting involved in my campaign at all, my website is formonroe.com. And so many, like, again, postcards are a huge way to help. I send you the postcard and the stamps. All you have to do is write your a note, and you can sign just your first name, and then I can mail all those out, and that helps speak directly to voters. And just getting that more exposure is such an important thing. Like you were saying, we've got third party and unaffiliated, it's in that endorsement background, it's a lot harder to do. And so just by having other people able to talk about that, then people are aware of more options. And I think everyone should be aware of all the options they have to vote.
Alrighty, with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. I will be linking all of Miss Pepper's social medias links in the description below, so that way you can all check it out for yourself. If y'all have enjoyed this video, please hit the like button down below, type a comment for any suggestions you may have, hit the notification bell in case you're new to the channel, and obviously hit subscribe, of course. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all later.
Thank you.